Welcome to the So You're Ready to Date podcast. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Angie. And here's where we talk about all things dating, love, and relationships. And most importantly, having fun.
Join us for practical advice for dating successfully on your terms.
Welcome aboard
and enjoy the ride.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time for another episode of So You're Ready to Date, the podcast. We're coming back to you to dive deeper into a topic that we hit on a couple weeks ago when we were talking about introducing your significant other to your friends and family. We talked about different ways to do that, and we were talking about them getting along, and we briefly mentioned about how we talk about our significant other, how that can influence the perception that our friends and family have about our significant other. And we thought that really deserved more time and attention because I think it's a very important point. We're going to take a deeper look into that this week, dive in and talk about some different scenarios there and maybe how to manage that, how to work through that, and really what that might mean for you, your significant other, and your relationship.
Well, because no relationship is perfect. But what happens when the people that you count on to vent are now the people that you need to talk to about this new person? And I had somebody ask me that question when I talked about it. I'm like, oh, that's a good question. You are one of the people that I talk to about just about everything. My sister would be the other one. So how do you handle those situations where you need to have those people in your life that you can talk to about everything, but how do you navigate needing to have that place to talk to get that neutral, somewhat neutral opinion because they hopefully love you and want the best for you, right? So how do we navigate those waters when you need to have that place to talk about and unpack it, but you don't want them to have this bad taste in their mouth about this person they may not have met yet?
There is a difference between getting advice and talking about a situation and complaining, right? If you go in and you complain that your significant other never does the dishes, he never puts his dishes away, and he always leaves his laundry on the floor, he leaves all the lights on in the house, is never home, and he doesn't come home till 2:00 in the morning, that is complaining. That is leaving a impression that he doesn't do anything right. That is leaving the impression that he treats you poorly, that he treats you like a maid, that he's expecting you to do everything, that he's out partying till 2:00 in the morning, and not leaving the impression that he does things well and right. Whereas if you go and say, I was home the other night, my significant other had something come up and it was just really weird. This thing happened. He ended up not coming home until 2:00 in the morning. And I'm really not sure how to approach that situation. Can you help me navigate through it? That's a very different conversation than saying, well, he just stays out till 2:00 in the morning and I don't know where he's at or what he's doing. Those are two different things, right? So it's a matter of how you talk about it, and complaining versus talking about a specific situation and asking for advice.
I think I've talked about it before on the podcast where I had a friend who every time she talked about her husband, it was just this barrage of kind of like you said, negativity about what he wasn't doing. And I think at one point I asked him like, so why are you guys still married? And she kind of had this shocked look of like, but I love him. I'm like, not according to everything you have told me. Because according to everything you have said about this person, why would you ever want to be married? Because it's this nonstop litany of everything that has gone wrong. So that's very true. That is it a specific situation? Then yes, finding those people you can talk to about it. But also if you're in this place of you just constantly complain, I feel like that's a red flag for you to be like, okay, what is not going right? Is it something about our relationship? Is it something about us? That should be something to step back and be like, oh, if all I ever want to do is complain, I don't want a relationship where all I ever do is complain about this person I've chosen to spend my life with.
That is something to step back and look at in your life as well. Is that something that is a common denominator, or is that something that is specific to your relationship? Do you do the same thing about your friends? Do you do the same thing about your family? Or is that specific about just your significant other? And I think that can be very telling too when you sit back and do a self-assessment about how you're speaking about that. But I have a friend who is currently housing his son's girlfriend. He doesn't have a relationship with this girl, but obviously it's his son's girlfriend, and he is letting her live with him. His son is away at school and she doesn't have any place else. And his son is a grown adult, so they're roommates at this point in time. And we went out for lunch, and he had nothing good to say about her. So I'm listening and I'm listening and I'm listening. And again, he doesn't have to have anything good to say about her because they're not together. It's not his significant other or anything like that. But he is letting her stay in his house, and he doesn't have to. She is living there and it's his house. So he could tell her to go live somewhere else. And he's clearly not happy that she's living there. And so I looked at him towards the end of the meal. And I said, okay, so I've listened to that, and you know what your options are. We've talked about your options. But if you want to be happy and the option that you're choosing is to continue to let her live there, what do you like about her? What does she do well? What can you compliment her on? He could not think of a single thing. I gave him a challenge, and I would be the same challenge that I would issue to any of you that find yourself saying negative things about your significant other on a continual basis. Go home and find one thing to compliment your significant other on every single day. Start with one. Every day, find a genuine compliment. And you may have to search for it. And it might be as simple as, well, they put their toothbrush away. That's okay. They put their coffee cup in the sink. That's okay. Find one thing and start with one thing and compliment them. Maybe they look nice. Maybe they chose a good outfit. But start with one compliment if you want to change the way that you are interacting with your significant other and you really do want to be with them, but find yourself complaining about them all the time. Starting with compliments is a great way to start shifting your mindset, because then you're going to find more of what you're looking for.
A lot of times as women, when we get together, our first thing is to complain about how we look or to complain about a diet, or there's this bonding that comes with complaining. So I think sometimes that can come in with it too. When you're having wine with the girlfriends out to brunch or whatever it might be, there's this idea that what you do is complain about your husband because that's what you do, right? Because men, you know. So sometimes I think there is this need to want to be seen as right or to be seen as the victim. So it gets really attractive to stay in this place of, well, it can't be me. Obviously, it's not me, it's them. Look at them not doing anything right. Look at them just sitting there watching TV when there's a sink full of dishes. Look at them X, Y, or Z. So to examine, why don't you want to find something good about them? What are you gaining from staying in this space of almost like a victim mentality, because they can't find anything good or redeeming about this person? So what's serving you to continue to want to only look at the negative, because you're getting something from it, whether you realize it or not. And sometimes that can shed a little bit of light as to, oh, maybe it's just because I had one bad experience in the beginning, or, you know, sometimes it'll take a while. If all you've ever heard is negative about this person, all right, it's going to take a little bit before I can see that they're not all the negative that maybe somebody has said about them.
You know, something else that has come up that I've heard from the women that I have worked with in the past is when they're talking about their significant other, long-term relationships, is they've got years and years and years of resentment built up that starts from one event that they're aware of, that they have talked about, but they haven't actually forgiven. And so, like you were saying, has something happened and you say that something is okay, you tell them that something is okay, but you're not actually letting it go. You're putting it in the Rolodex, and everything that happens is compiling on top of it. I can't tell you how many times I have heard, men and women both, but I've heard people say to me about their significant other, well, if things don't change, I'm leaving. Well, it takes both parties to create a relationship, and it takes both parties to destroy a relationship. Regardless of what you think your level of responsibility in that is, you both bear some level of responsibility in whatever happened to create and tear down that relationship. Taking a look at that and recognizing where that might stem from might be another way to unwind that, and stepping back and doing some forgiveness work might be important too. And we could do another episode on forgiveness in the future, because that's a huge topic in and of itself.
Yeah, that's a loaded topic maybe for some people. But I think, yeah, it's this idea that there are two parties in this, and to have not expressed yourself, and maybe you did, and maybe they didn't hear that. But yeah, it's like, okay, I can give you this try, but again, communicating clearly. These are the expectations from you. These are the expectations from me, because maybe it's about you communicating in the moment instead of waiting 6 weeks later and being like, hey, remember when you didn't take out the trash right when I told you to take out the trash? And then it added into, you didn't pick your socks up off the floor. So recognizing where you both lie, the fault feels like a weird word to say, where your responsibility in creating a harmonious relationship, and coming back to how you're talking to other people about them, especially if you're hoping that this person is going to be in your life long term. Then it also means that your friends and family have to be with this person long term. And do you want to start off a new relationship having them think that this person isn't who maybe they really are at their core? Because hopefully the vast majority of your interactions with your new someone or your established someone is positive. And so you're almost handicapping this new person when you start them off with this very negative first impression.
Some of this too can go back to self-sabotage. And do these complaints come from a place of self-sabotage? Is that something that you're unconsciously bringing your friends and family into? Such as, you've been cheated on in the past. Let's use this as an example. You've been cheated on in the past. So you get into this new relationship with this person. You have this fear of being cheated on and this expectation of being cheated on because you've been cheated on in the past. So you treat this new person like they're cheating on you, and you're going to treat them like they're cheating on you until they prove that they haven't. But you're treating them like they've cheated on you, and you're expecting them to cheat on you until they cheat on you. It's a form of self-sabotage, that you're putting the energy out there and you're treating them like they're going to do something until it actually happens. And so is the complaining that you're doing and the things that you're looking for, is that a form of self-sabotage that you're putting on yourself? So there could be a lot of places that these complaints are coming from, really sitting back with some of that self-reflection too. And that's where journaling can come in and help, really asking yourself, where is this stemming from? What am I doing? And what am I trying to portray? Or what is this telling me about myself?
Maybe it falls under that self-sabotage category. Or is it one of those where you don't want to be in the relationship, but you don't have the courage to break it off, and you don't want to be seen as the bad guy? So you start doing all of these things so that the other person gets frustrated enough to be the person that says they're going to break up, because you don't want to, but you also don't want to be the bad guy who broke up with somebody, and you just want the other person to be like, I'm fed up being treated like this, or you talking like this. And then they're the ones with the actual courage to do the breaking up. I mean, I'm sure it could be a form of self-sabotage, and maybe it's just being a jerk. I don't
There's some of that too. That's a very common occurrence as well. But one of the things to keep in mind is when the complaints start coming out about your significant other, it really does influence the way your friends and family are going to see your significant other. Do you want your friends and family to have a positive relationship with your significant other? Thinking about how that's going to impact that relationship can be really important for your long-term success. Yes, your significant other is not in a relationship with your friends and family. It's about you and your significant other. But depending on your family dynamics, that can be a really huge part of how your relationship functions.
I'd also ask yourself, when something goes wrong, your first instinct is to talk to who? If it's your sister or your best friend or somebody like that, and not the actual other person in your relationship, then maybe that's where you need to start. Are you having those hard conversations with the person it's actually affecting first? Or is your first instinct to text the group chat saying, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what so and so did? So I think sometimes it can be easy to want to go to the public first, so to speak, and not be actually having those conversations with the person that can actually have an effect on the outcome. So are you having those conversations, trying to do that work, and then maybe getting advice from your friends and family so that that first instinct of anger is not directed to your friends and family so they still have this sour taste in their mouth, but are you actually having the conversations with the person who has some ability to do something about it?
So let's switch gears just a little bit for a minute and talk about, okay, so you recognize that you've done some of this complaining, you're stopping, you're making these changes, you're making these adjustments, you've done this self-reflection, but some of this damage has been done. Let's talk about the relationship and the views that your friends and family have on your significant other, and some things that you can do to start to repair that, or maybe to even sit back and evaluate, because maybe you're not complaining about your significant other. Maybe that's never been who you are, but your friends and family still don't like your significant other, and you can't figure out why.
Oof, that's a he got the love goggles on, right? But he's just so dreamy and wonderful and could be. Maybe she's just perfect for you, whatever it is. But yeah, sometimes those who aren't in the thick of it can see things that maybe we don't see.
Asking a question, what is it about them that you don't like?
Yeah.
Is a really good starting point. Have a rational conversation. Can you hold your emotions in and listen without getting upset to what somebody else is telling you? Because they can see red flags that you may not be able to see, especially in the new relationship when, like Lisa said, you've got your love goggles on.
Well, and this is not going to be the last time I talk about 90 Day Fiance. I don't know why I'm obsessed with it. I just am. But there was something very similar to this on an episode I watched the other day where this girl, 18, very cute, very pretty, was having lunch with her friend, talking about the fact that she's bringing her fiance over from Spain, who happens to be about 10 years older than she is. And her friend's like, but you're 18. Do you really have to get married now? Why can't you wait and see? He got his visa. He comes over and, she's like, I don't know you. I don't trust you because I don't know you yet. I don't know why you can't just wait, why you can't see if this is a real relationship. This age gap is pretty significant. And his first retort is, well, that sounds like somebody who isn't dating. That sounds like somebody who doesn't have a boyfriend, who doesn't have a relationship. I get it that sometimes you may come back and think, well, they're just jealous because they don't have a love like we do. Could very well be the case. But could it just be that they're seeing something that you can't see? That because they have a little bit of objectivity and they're not blinded by the fact that he's an amazing kisser and he holds your hand and he brings you flowers and all of these other things, that maybe they can see certain things, not because they're jealous and not because they don't want you to be happy, but because they love you and they see that something just doesn't sit right. Why don't you take a little time?
And sometimes when that's the case, spending a little bit of extra time together so that people can get to know each other can ease some of those tensions, and some of those red flags can go away when your friend gets to know, in that case, who I don't know, I don't watch 90 Day Fiance. So maybe if her friend got to know this guy, maybe some of that would go away. However, if that first retort is, well, that sounds like somebody who doesn't have a boyfriend, that sounds like somebody who wants to control somebody and sees an 18-year-old that he can control. But that's just my brain going. I'm a very trusting person, and that's the first thing I thought of. So we'll see where that goes. But just saying that spending some extra time with some of those relationships where they can get to know each other can ease those tensions. But listening without emotion to what somebody is telling you those red flags are can give you a chance to step back and say, okay, are those really red flags that I'm not seeing? Are those things that I need to take into consideration? Or are those things that I saw, and are those things that I'm okay with? Because not everybody is going to be okay with the same things that you're okay with, but am I personally in danger? Is my safety in danger? Or is it just something that's not that big of a deal that my friends don't like? Really assessing that and sitting back and taking stock of it, but taking what the opinions of the people that you hold dear in your life and just really evaluating them to see if they hold any weight.
It's about not being defensive. Like you said, we all have different thresholds of what we consider a red flag, what we consider a deal breaker, what we are and are not willing to put up with. And I think even taking off the expectation of they don't need to be best friends. Just because you and I are best friends doesn't mean they need to be best friends. Can your best case scenario be they can hang out for 2 hours during game night and nobody ends up flipping a table or throwing wine or it doesn't end up with the cops being called? How can we redefine what we need in those relationships of they just need to be able to have civil conversations when we have group outings, or we can go to dinner and people can chit chat and be nice, and leave this expectation of they have to be perfect best friends, because maybe they won't be. Maybe they will never get along. And that maybe that's something that over time, when they see that their actions and their words are matching and that they're doing what they said they do, they're showing up, they're making the changes, and that feeling can change over time, but quit expecting them to be something they never will be.
Those opinions don't have any, I won't say they don't have any merit, but they don't need to have any influence. You could take them into consideration and release them. My ex-husband, my mother never liked him. Still doesn't, never did. It was not a pleasant, it was never pleasant when they were together. She has one good thing to say about him. It is the only good thing she has ever said about him in the 18 years that I've known him now. Sometimes you just need to let people have their own opinions, and you need to let them go. And there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. It didn't matter how much time they spent together. She never liked him. And sometimes it's just the way that life is, knowing where that threshold is, sitting back and listening within reason, and knowing when it's okay to say, okay, I've listened to you. I understand where you're coming from. I appreciate that you are looking out for me, but I've got me and you can take care of you, is kind of where that goes. And then you can move on and continue with that relationship. Sometimes, though, your significant other may have a strained relationship with your friends and family due to all of that complaining that we were talking about earlier in the episode. In that case, we do have the ability to influence things, help to ease those tensions and improve those relationships.
At some point, you have to weigh the return on investment. Is it worth forcing this issue? Or is it, like you said, just be like, listen, If it got really bad, I would let you know, but it's not. Or, it's within my limits of what I'm willing to deal with and put up with. I appreciate your concern. It's not a topic open for discussion. I think sometimes you're like, I learned my lesson. I should not have complained. I'm not going to anymore. And just be like, I know where you stand. I appreciate that. I love you for it, but this is not a topic we're discussing anymore. And sometimes that just has to be the case. They can't be your person you talk to if you've got a concern or complaint about your significant other.
And on the flip side, start actively talking about the positive things. If they bring you flowers, if they cook you a meal, if they did the dishes after you've had a long day at work, if they take you out on a special date, if they do a surprise for you, if they go out of their way to do whatever. Every time that there is something, whether it is big or small, just like we're talking about celebrating yourselves, giving yourself a pat on the back, stopping and taking a moment to celebrate your wins and recognizing how far you've come, doing the same for your significant other, and doing that vocally and publicly in front of your friends and family that have up until now only heard the complaints that have come out of the relationship, will go a long way in starting to shift things. But make sure that it's authentic. Make sure that the things that you're talking about are real. We had mentioned it a couple episodes ago that it takes, I think, 8 compliments to negate one negative statement. So just remember that if you've been complaining for a while, it's going to take an awful lot of positive things about your significant other to erase and start to shift some of those mindsets and some of those thought processes. But starting small and remembering to say good things about your significant other when the opportunity arises, and making sure that they are genuine and that you mean them and that they are real and sincere, is going to start to turn those tides. And the more you do it, the faster that will happen.
There's a meme or whatever going around the internet that the longer the anniversary post, the worse the state of the relationship. So yeah, true or not, sometimes it is the simple things. My boyfriend will occasionally post something on his stories when I've left him a note or sent something nice, or maybe it's sending those funny memes back and forth. Whatever it is, sometimes it is those little things where I don't need them to do a full on Instagram post, but a little thing in the stories and a well thought out hashtag can do wonders to kind of help build that trust of, yes, things are good, things are okay. Brick by brick, you're slowly going to build that up, but sometimes it just doesn't work. So do you have a story where it just didn't work? How did you handle that? How did that end up? Did it end your relationship with your boyfriend, girlfriend, or with your family? How have you handled dealing with introducing somebody into your life, and whether that went well or not? How does that work? Make sure you're emailing us at soyou'readytodate@gmail.com. Or if you've got a question about dating, about relationships, about anything, email at soyou'readytodate@gmail.com, because we want to know all of that stuff. That's where we get a lot of our loosey-goosey ideas about what we're going to talk about, how we're going to give you the best possible content for the podcast. We also are on all of the platforms, but mostly Spotify and Apple. So please rate and review and share the podcast. You know somebody who would benefit greatly from our content. I know you do, because you're an awesome listener. We want more awesome listeners. So share the podcast when something really resonates for you, because that's the best way to get good reviews and good referrals, is when somebody really awesome recommends us to their friends and family. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you spending some time with us each and every week, and join us next week for another amazing episode.